here are the cowling parts. Um, and it's not that complicated once I figured it out. Those pieces there go onto the bulkhead that's already on the fuselage. And you can see in this one, there's a little outline there where the other piece sandwiches on top of it, W27. And so those little pieces that go in, that's for the exhaust, I guess, are going to go. So all that gets lined up. So the first thing I did, I don't know if this is the sequence of events you're supposed to do, but I glued those two together, making sure they're lined up. The verticals are there and the little pieces are where they're supposed to be. And the outline is perfect. And so I made sure everything butts up really nice, which it does. Again, this thing fits beautifully and the laser cut parts are wonderful. Once that's dry, that fits in there. Now, one thing I had to do was make sure this was loose up here. I had it glued down before, but it had a really funny hump in it. Now this fit nicely, because remember those little slits are going to have to be folded over. You want them to kind of round down. So I opened that up, put in a tiny bit of glue on there. I smeared it out a little bit better. Don't worry, I'm not that crazy. And I put that in, and it's in real nice. Looks good. And now this is where the engine's going to go. The engine's going to go on the front of that W31 piece. So put some glue on the back of that, and then I'm going to take my little pokey piece I used to put glue on things, and I'm going to line it up, make sure the hole's lined up like that. Put that on, and then make sure it's the way I want it, which is, I'm not sure that's correct or not in terms of where the cylinder's supposed to be, but that's the way I ended up putting it on. And then just sort of tap it, make sure that it's tight like usual, and then that's going to be your engine. And that big white space in there, I think, is going to be covered mostly with a spinner and things, so that won't look bad. And the engine, again, is hidden behind this big spinner and the propeller, so I'm not that worried about it. Making sure that that's lined up, looks good. Now, the cowling itself, I test fit it, and it looks really good if I just go ahead and attach it in its little, make it into a little cylinder. And that seems to work just grand. And so I'm just pulling this around just like you do with all those fuselage pieces, etc., etc. And I've already preformed it a little bit, and then slide it together and squeeze it, making sure my lines all line up where they're supposed to. And doing this, like I said, I tested it. It slides right over the cowling skeleton, which is nice. Again, with the laser cut parts, it's really a joy because they really do go together pretty nicely. It makes, if you've never done a paper model, if you can find one with those laser cut parts, it is actually quite a time saver, and you know that things are sort of the way they're supposed to be. So I kind of enjoy that. And this one in particular is going really nice because of that, I think, partially. So this is me just showing you can slide that cowling right over, and you just line up the top seam and bottom seam, or the panel line, and then just kind of making sure that I can get it in there. And these then fold over and attach to that lip, supposedly. So I took a break from that because I'm panicking about those petal design things. And here is me just starting to glue those pieces, the little slits that were cut. And these will be glued. And I push my finger down and kind of sculpt them down over, because that's supposed to be rounded slightly, because they're going to, basically that's part where the cowling is going to go nearby. And so it's going to roll over down into the cowling. So what I did with this now is put my little backing that is softer. It's not hard, so I can push my little dabbing tool, my little round tool, into it, and I'm just very carefully going over each petal and trying to make it curved. Now, I didn't know whether I should just put the cowling piece on and then just push the pieces down onto that center piece, and then not do this, or I guess do this but just put it on and then put on the cowling around the edging, and then just put the tip right down there, or should I put these together separately? So here I test fit it again, and I'm just wondering at this point, now that they're slightly curved, can I just put a little glue on the edge and then just tap these down like this and just glue them like that, and then in succession glue them all together? And I ultimately decided against that. I decided to put them together on their own, individually, off of the model, um, and just butt glue them. And I don't know if the other way would have worked or not, but I ended up butt gluing them because I was worried about, are they really going to fit well? And when I just put them just on the tip, are they going to, on that engine piece, are they going to look too angular? I wanted to make sure they look rounded. So I took this back and I played with it for a very, very, very long time. And it was hard to, you know, show. So here it is done, at least as done as I can do it. As I'm fond of saying, it's definitely not Polish. I could throw in the Slovakians or the Czechs or the Germans or the Russians, the Ukraine, anybody who knows how to do these. I'm not one of them. But there's what the inside looks like, and I colored those pieces. But it did come together. I put it together with super glue in some cases, which is kind of dumb. There's also little spaces on there, so if you look carefully, you can see air through some of the pieces. You can't tell really with this picture, which is maybe it's better than I think. But I know there's some spots in there that are open. So what I decided to do was try a little experiment and to make it a little more pliable in there because it's got some super glue and most of it's Eileen's tacky glue. But I'm a little worried because the super glue is brittle. So I took some Tamiya dark gray, like I think dark German gray or tank gray or something, and I mixed it with Eileen's tacky glue. And the idea is I'd get basically colored glue that I could smear over all those little seams on the inside, and maybe that would help hold them in place better, and that they would sort of be um, um, also have a little bit of elasticity that the glue would give. It's not all just the super glue. And if the super glue does crack, this is here as a backing. So what I did was I took this stuff and I basically painted it in with one of my beat up paint brushes. And I painted over all the little seams. Um, and it's a dark color because that way, if you look on the outside, I'm hoping that you wouldn't see any light shining through. You wouldn't see a seam as much. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. I don't think anybody, normal person, would do this, but this is what I decided to do to try to fix some of my foibles. And this just went all the way around. And then once it's dry, it'll again be doing two things: gluing and also coloring from the back. Because some of my seams, I think, are actually air. The glue has dried and they're clear, so there's actually air in there. So I think that doesn't look too bad. I'm, marginally pleased here. Now, next part is to go ahead and glue these suckers together. And I test fit this many times. I sanded the skeleton a little bit, the formers, to make sure things fit. And this slides over very, very nicely now. There's a couple places that aren't nice, like that. Doesn't look good. It's a little straight edge there. It shouldn't look like that. But I went in and sort of tweaked these very carefully because you've spent 93 trillion hours doing this. You don't want to mess it up. Um, ask me how I know. Very delicately trying to make sure it fits nice. And now it's time basically to add glue. So I started by adding a little glue to the tip here. Don't know if that really worked. In fact, in the end, my cowling petals don't quite touch this, and I don't care. I still think it looks good. You have to go in there and really stare to see that there's a gap. I'm not too worried about it. I might be able to fill it later. And I'm starting to put glue on here, but just sparingly because I know that doesn't look sparingly, but just not every single spot because I want to be able, once there's glue on there, the paper won't go on as easy. And I struggle slightly here. The important thing is to get that bottom seam lined up along that bottom skeleton right there in the middle. And then once it moves over, you got to move fast once there's glue because this stuff grabs quick. And again, when you don't have glue on there, it slides over nice. So I have to sort of pull on it and make space and make sure it goes over the rear bulkhead, which ultimately it does. I'm leaving this in here to show you, kind of in real time what you got to do. The hard part is those petals up there that my fingers are over are delicate. And as I'm pulling this, I'm pushing slightly with my index and middle finger on my left hand, but I can't, crash it down because they'll snap. And so maybe I should have put tabs in there. I don't know. I'll get more petal design when I do the stupid wheel pants. Anyway, now I'm just making sure that carefully as possible, it's down and it's flush with the back end. And now that is just going to attach to the front bulkheads on the fuselage. Um, I painted everything black back there, so hopefully it'll meld in pretty well. But this is the cowling, and considering I started this morning with just a ring, um, now it's together, and I'll be dang, it works. I prefer the concentric rings. I don't like the petals, um, partially because they're very difficult, at least for me. But also, I don't like the look of them because now that this thing is done, it looks to me weird to have these lines emanating and going around the whole cowling. It just doesn't look good. So what I would do is fill this in, sand it, prime it, and then repaint it if I was doing this like a typical model of mine. But I'm not too upset with it. And this is the first time I've done something like this, so we're going to give it a shot. If I really hate it, I can always do that priming and sanding as it ends and paint it black. One of you great, I think it was Pegasus, somebody said on the little videos, a comment, you can always paint it black, which is true because it almost looks like a big zero. I think there were some of these with some black on there on the cowlings too. But we'll see. We're going to keep this and see how it looks. Excuse me. So I put a fair amount of glue on there, and now it's a matter of committing the cowling to that bulkhead. And you just make sure you got to have, the top and bottom seams ideally line up perfectly, and everything else lines up, like the exhaust ports, all that. And it turns out they do very well. But you got to sort of smush them around. That's why this glue is nice, because while it's tacky and it will hold together, it allows you a little bit of leeway, a little squish time that you can sort of move things. And so I just spent a lot of time looking at it, making sure that it's even, making sure I got the same amount of space on the top versus the bottom, making sure those exhausts line up. I'm not sure how the exhausts go in quite yet, but that's going to be something we'll do soon. But here I'm just pushing on it, making sure I got good contact, because it has to hold. But also, like, I've done this before. I put a cowling on like this with super glue, and man, you got to get that right the first time. So I thought, no, I worked too hard on this. I'm just going to put it on with my tacky glue and just push on it and then keep playing with it for probably 10 minutes. And then once it's on, it's on. And I'm just quadruple checking it, making sure that it's solid, making sure that it does look even, which it does all the way around. And that black piece is nice. It just sort of disappears down into the cowl and gives the illusion of there being bulkheads and depth in there, which is fine with me. I'm just making sure that it's on, and it's looking pretty good. So this was a huge headache. At least for me, it was very difficult. If I did it again, I would probably, again, make tabs or something. Maybe that would work better. I think the profile is okay. It could be a little better. Here I'm checking to make sure that I'm where my propeller shaft is going to go is actually even and straight, which it is. It lines up with the sort of datum lines on the body. But I don't think I think maybe the cowling could be slightly more rounded on the lip. You don't want it to be angled into the center, but it doesn't look so bad, especially in person. So I'm gonna call this a win, even if it was rather difficult. But there it is, just trying to show it off a little bit. And there's sort of the front, and that's where the engine will look fine under a spinner. The whole thing looks pretty good. It's really coming together. It's nice. The tails are on, the cowling's on. I'll probably put a couple more fuselage things, and then we will start the old wings, which will really be fun, because then she'll really come to life once we put wings on there. Anyway, it's looking really good, and I am pleased that that's over. The next painful one, like I said, will be the landing gear, the wheel pants, because it's the same kind of structure. But hopefully with this, I'll have practiced.